A disaster investigation team from the Institute for Business and Home Safety traveled to Central Florida on February 2, 2007. They witnessed firsthand devastation left behind by 3 deadly tornadoes. Through a series of site visits and the analysis of ground and aerial photography, IBHS investigators gained valuable insight into how Florida's building codes fared during the storm. They came away with an even stronger case for the need to adopt and enforce similar codes in other vulnerable states.
Tornadoes are a different animal. They don't have that same type of probability. Hurricanes are large. The wind speeds are usually slower, but they're deadly in their own way.
The building codes that we have in place here in Florida are making a difference in terms of reducing the amount of devastation. Still, a lot of the houses were damaged pretty severely, but fortunately nobody died in the newer homes. Most of the deaths occurred in the older homes and in mobile homes that were even before the new standards were put in place for mobile homes. So we are seeing, I think, a difference in the way that homes are performing as we start to tie them together, even in tornadoes.
The building codes may not be the complete answer for tornadoes. They answer hurricanes much better when it comes to resistance. Still, the fact of having a minimum code in place in the middle portions and in the back end of these states is extremely important. Let's compare, since we've just had these same recent type storms in Alabama, let's compare the house in Florida in the middle of the state to the one in Alabama that has no building code. Is there a difference there? The answer is extremely yes.
I think as we look at the damage that we've seen here, that we should be taking some of these lessons back, that where we don't have codes in place, by putting in stronger codes and building at least to that minimum level that's being mandated in the international codes, we would have more resistant construction. There's an awful lot of the country where there's no conscious effort to really connect the pieces of the house together. So you're paying a lot of money for materials that are going into your walls and your roof. And if you paid a little bit more to connect these pieces together, it would be a much stronger home.
We're trying to take the information that we learn from these events, from these hazards, from these disasters, and reapply them into these other areas where right now, would there be more massive damage? Would there be more deaths? Absolutely yes, because they don't have that resistant factor.
Would we be better off building homes in the middle of the state to the stronger standards on the coast? On an individual basis, if somebody wants their house to have a better chance to stand up for a tornado, it would be a wise decision to make. Are we going to mandate that across the board in building codes? I don't think so.
There should be a minimum standard by which you build, and the building codes that are set in place, the ones that we promulgate, the ones that we educate on and communicate to these states, is the standard one that's used nationwide, and it is the minimum level of safety. And there are places in our country that right now houses are being built and there's no minimum level of safety, and no one really knows what that minimum level of safety is and how to get there. And with the type of catastrophic damage that this particular event put on these existing structures that were there, you're still going to have failures, but you're going to have less of them. And you get into this domino effect again. If the garage door would have stayed on, then you wouldn't have got the internal pressurization. Then you wouldn't have gotten maybe a failure in the roof system connections to the wall. Well, that's the way it always works. Once you push that first domino, there's always the possibility that the next one's going to fall, and the next one's going to fall, and the next one's going to fall.
I think in terms of the minimum levels that we're probably on a pretty good path structurally in terms of tying houses together. There is a variation in the strength. You get stronger near the coast, and people could build better if they want to. But in terms of what we're going to mandate, I think we're probably at a reasonable place. It would be nice to move that bar up because it would reduce the losses, it would reduce the vulnerability, and people would be able to recover much more quickly if they did build to a bit higher standard. And certainly there is some interest in the state of Florida, particularly along the coastline, of building code plus, of building at a little bit higher level so that we further reduce our losses, so that our risks will stabilize and we'll be able to continue living in this sunshine state and enjoying the weather that we have with less worry about being able to afford it and being able to survive the storms that come.